Hey everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. It is Monday, the 29th of March 2021. We can now meet people in groups of 6 again. I am so freaking happy for this because, as much as I've been able to get out and see people because of my job, because there's some people I actually have to see and we can go for walks and exercise outside, I'm lucky enough to see people. I do have a friend of mine that we go skateboarding and paddleboarding and stuff. So, there's things I can do in small groups, but it's been very nice to know that as of today, I can now meet up with my friends from my hockey team. We can go sit and have a drink in the garden. We can actually socialise and just get back to being around people again because we've all been pretty cooped up. Now, as much as ecstatic and wonderfully happy as I am about this is a daunting prospect for a lot of you. And this is something I've been dealing with a lot this last week because it's gotten real. It's not that pie in the sky. It's not that whole, we'll get to meet up again at some point. It's like, shit, we can actually meet up now. It's also one step closer to going back to work. And social anxiety is through the roof right now. And rightly so. There is a it's more so prevalent now because it's real. It's not that it wasn't like this before. And I've done on previous podcasts talked about introducing myself back in after lockdown. But now that it's actually happening, this is where it's really in your face. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of different types of social anxiety, how to get around it and how you might want to combat it. And also, again, just reiterate that moving at your own pace is absolutely fine. Like, somebody like me is a very social creature. I like to be around people. I kind of need it. Whereas some people, you may not be that inclined to be in a rush to go and meet people again. You may just be happy doing things on a smaller scale. Like, you don't have to meet up with 6 people. You can just sit in a garden with one person. This is the thing. Media have been covering it, and as usual, do love a media outlet. Maybe off the mark on a few things, but that's what we're dealing with. So let's talk about social anxiety in the beginning. Okay, so what is it to start with? So social anxiety is a nervous/anxiety response to being in social situations. That doesn't necessarily mean groups of people. It just means large social situations. Not quite the same as agoraphobia, or agoraphobia, depending on how you want to pronounce it. That is a fear of open spaces, can tie into social anxiety, but the agoraphobia is basically, it just doesn't matter about if anybody's there or not. It can just be an open space, makes you feel uncomfortable. You like to have the enclosing things. Obviously, claustrophobia is the opposite. You don't like things confining you. You'd rather be able to escape. So social anxiety is a fear of being around groups of people. And it can be people you know, it can be people you don't know. People with social anxiety tend to be hyped up a little bit around new situations, but there are people that can kind of feel a bit worn out around people they know as well. You'll know if you get that way where you're absolutely fine for a few hours and you just feel like you have to get out of the situation. That is, again, social anxiety is kicking in because you feel like you need to escape. It could just be that people around you are boring. There is that as well. So knowing this falls into 2 categories as well, which I'm going to go into in a minute. So having social anxiety, being around groups of people, it could be the workplace, it could be being around certain friends, and this has been perpetuated in the last few years, massively so, by social media. Social media allows us to be connected to lots of people from the safety of our own small space, and this has perpetuated a problem that a lot of people have become oblivious to, probably until now. As I said before, when it was the coming out of lockdown podcast a few back, so go back and listen to that one to get more into the whole thing of coming out of lockdown. Now, people some of you may be slightly more introvert than you thought you were. And this lockdown has basically put a microscope on that so you can really see how introverted you are. Now, the trouble is, when you were going to work, you were around people. You may have friends and family that you meet up with because you're constantly getting in and out of the house and there's different social work situations. You never truly experienced being on your own and enjoying it because there's always something to do and it kept you at bay. Now where we've been pretty much isolating ourselves for a year now on and off, you became very, very comfortable all of a sudden with being inside a bubble, with a situation that meant you could get out of social, I don't know, responsibilities and agreements without any real need for a big excuse. So you just stop going out. Now the prospect is that you may lose that. We're not going to be in lockdown, hopefully for much longer. So you're not going to have that as an excuse to not go and meet people. So this is actually your fail-safe get out of jail card is very quickly disintegrating in your hands. And this can lead to that anxiety as well. So social media allowed you to basically communicate with everybody you wanted at a space and time that's right for you, but you didn't have to see anybody. So you weren't not in touch with anybody, but you didn't have to actually go and do something. There was no social obligation to turn up. And now that that's kind of going, and there's a lot of people, very much like myself, that are hyped up for this whole we can go out, we can meet people again, we can be 6 of us, it's going to be a great time. You may not be feeling that sentiment, and that is absolutely fine. Remember, you move at your own pace, okay? But just that's probably why all of a sudden you've been feeling more anxious about social situations, is because now all of a sudden there's no real excuse to not turn up other than you saying, I don't want to go. And nobody likes saying that. I mean, well, I don't care. I'll tell people I don't want to go somewhere as it is. But for a lot of people who already suffer from a form of anxiety, social anxiety, you're worried about the judgment that's going to come if you don't turn up, or if you do turn up and it's not as good as it could be. So now we move on to what happens when you hit a social situation. What's running through your head? What's going on? What's triggering things off? So there's 2 types of social anxiety, and I don't think people understand this as such, because they affect you in different ways. And you can use this to your advantage to navigate a social situation. So the first type of social anxiety is a fear of being in groups of people. You fear being in a group of people because there's lots of conversations going on. You find it very hard to track who's saying what. You maybe feel that you can't contribute in a large group situation. And it can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of people's opinions that you may or may not agree with. Do you say anything? Do you not? Do you know everybody? Are they your partner's friends, or are they just groups of people that you don't know from a work, different segment, whatever? That large group environment can be quite intimidating because there's lots of people around you. You may feel expected to contribute. You don't know how to because there's multiple conversations going on. There's a higher chance of maybe offending somebody or somebody disagreeing with you and then having to deal with that. So there's medium to large group anxiety. Okay. Now, you may actually be perfectly fine dealing with a one-to-one conversation that's quite intense because you can read that person. It gives you time to see how the flow of the conversation's going. You can build a rapport with them and you can talk one-to-one. There's not a lot of other voices going on and you're not trying to scan the group to see what's happening. That's first type of social anxiety. So groups of people make you feel very uncomfortable, but you're quite happy to sit down with one person and have a conversation. Now, the other one is the reverse. One-on-one conversations are very intense and make you feel very uncomfortable because you're not sure if you've got anything to say. You don't know how long you can hold the conversation for. If the conversation looks like it's dragging and it's starting to die off, how do you get out of it? You're not sure when to stop it. The intensity of a one-to-one conversation is still a social aspect. It's still very daunting, and that is the other type of social anxiety. But you are probably better, from my experience, you are probably better in a larger group because you can melt into the conversation. And I've had these conversations with my clients, and I've got a couple in one camp, a couple in the other. So being around a large group of people freaks them out. They don't really know how to follow the conversation. There's too many voices going on. They don't know enough of the people to make a conversation. Yet in a one-to-one conversation, they're absolutely fine. Other way around is people are like, no, I'm quite happy to sit in a group because I don't have to talk all the time. I'm quite happy to just sit there and throw in the odd word and, oh, what do you think? Yeah, I think that. And then withdraw back again. The intensity of a one-to-one is too much. There's too much going on. There's too much eye contact. It really makes you feel like you're on the spot because this person's talking to you. They're not talking to a group which you are part of. You can dip out and come in. When you feel like you want to talk about something, you feel like you can. And when you think, oh, I don't really know enough about this, I can scale back. So those are your 2 different types of social anxiety, to put it in the simplest forms. Now, if you didn't realize that, now you know. And you can use this to your advantage. So when you're in a social group, if you know that you'd rather have a one-to-one conversation, steer yourself towards those. if you know that you'd rather be part of group conversations, stay in larger pods of people and float from one to the other, because that way you can come in and out as you please. The spotlight's not on you, and you can go from there. The next thing that most people with social anxiety have is an over-analysing of the situation after. And it's actually that causes the anxiety, not the time itself. So you will have the conversation, you will find yourself talking to people, the conversation seems to go relatively well at the time, and then the moment you're on your way home, the reel is running through your head, you're picking everything apart. Did I say the right thing? Why did I go quiet there? Oh God, do they think I'm a good person? Did I say the wrong thing? Was I even interesting enough? They look boring. Did I say enough? Somebody mentioned that I was a bit quiet. All of these things are going to rush through your head, and that's actually what causes the anxiety in the social situation. It's all the thoughts afterwards. So there's a few things we can do to put our mind at rest once we've left the social situation. So first of all, and I've said this before in videos, which you can find later on, is one, be aware of the reaction at the time and in the next 2 to 3 days. Now, that's not going to stop your mind from racing, but if you can hold it down for a little bit, does the world end? And I mean this quite literally, because that's what it's going to feel like. Has the world ended in the 24 hours after that conversation? Has there been any blowback? Have people stopped talking to you? Did literally the world open up and swallow you? Because that's what you may feel that is going to happen. You can do a lot by stop internalizing for a little while and actually just realizing that, look what's going on around you. Is everything moving on as normal? You probably didn't offend anybody like you thought you had. There's no negative repercussions. You're going to be okay. So sometimes it's good just to take a second and take stock on the outside. The other thing is, and this is a really important one, is how long have you known these people? And what was your reaction to them? Now, when we have anxiety and this inner monologue's going a mile a minute in our heads, our first thing to do is poke holes at ourselves and be like, I didn't say the right thing. Those people probably don't like me. If somebody makes a comment saying, oh, you're a little bit quiet, which is usually the one that triggers off people with social anxiety, because of course they're quiet. They don't really know what to say. They're not sure what to do. By the way, there's nothing wrong with being quiet. That if that's who you are, that's who you are. Like, own the crap out of it, because there are enough people that are loud and shouldn't be loud. So what we need to do is think about our reaction to them. And this is usually something that pops up, and you'll do it under self-analyzation anyway, but we can do it as an exercise as is, and actually ask yourself what you thought of them. Were they interesting? Were they people you could build a rapport with? How long have you known them? Are they even your friends? Because the trouble is as well, a lot of the time with our really close friends, we don't get this kickback as much as we do with people we don't know. But it's still something that you do worry about. You wonder if you've wound your friends up. You wonder if you've pissed them off. Did you say the right thing? Was this, something that we should have been talking about? Oh God, maybe I said the wrong thing. They went quiet for a second. Apologies. But you have to know the people you're talking to. I had this conversation with a client, and they met some people, and it's still playing in their head, right? Bit of discovery. It turns out this was over a year ago, and it's still rattling around in their head. And I was like, okay, so how long ago was this first incident? Turns out it was a year ago. This is what anxiety does. It plays on your head even after a long period of time. If you don't understand anxiety, to a degree, you may not understand the kind of timelines that these people are working with. Like, it will bring back stuff that happened a long time ago because you still haven't resolved the issue. Okay, so there is a lot of psychology involved in anxiety that goes way beyond the things that are actually troubling them now. Probably happened a long time ago, but they haven't managed to figure them out yet. Just as a side note, and it was so. How long ago was this? It was about a year ago. Have you met them? Have you spoken to them since? Well, no, not really. Okay, great. No, not a problem. Did you like them? Bit of a, pause. Well, no, I guess, no, not really. They weren't really my kind of people. And there you go. There's the light bulb moment. Rather than internalizing your failings in the social situation or the things that you may have done wrong or their opinions on you, because you won't know their opinions on you unless they vocalize them, and depending on how they vocalize them will depend on whether you should listen to them or not. Think about how you felt about them. Did you create, was there I hate the term and the way it's used, but was there a vibe between you guys? Was there a good vibe in the group? Was everybody talking? Were they giving you a chance to converse? What was the relationships to people in the group? Was it happen to be your partner's friend and their partners who they knew each other and you didn't? To which point, of course, you're going to feel a little bit awkward jumping into a social group where there's already established relationships. And this is the other thing as well. Be a bit kind on yourself on what you're walking into. Now, for me, who is lucky enough to be a huge extrovert, open to new experiences, and generally quite an up person, I can integrate in social situations anywhere. I've always been able to do it as a kid. I've developed it more as an adult, and it serves me in my job. But you can stick me in a room full of anybody, and I will find something to talk about with them. Because I'm also what we would class as an intellectual from a personality scale, I like to learn about stuff. So I've always got some either thought, a little bit of knowledge, or an opinion on something that somebody's talking about so that I can integrate in. And this is going to lead on to something else in a minute, which comes under the anxiety and stuff. If you don't know the people in the group that you're now being put in front of, but they know each other, you are already on a back foot. It's not a bad thing, but it is something to be aware of. Now, if you have to try and build a relationship with people that already have relationships with each other, that's difficult. It is difficult because they already have inside jokes. They know how far to push one another. They know where the boundaries are. You're trying to figure that out in a group that already has it figured out. So it's not like you've all come together for the first time and everybody's on the same level playing field. You are coming in at a slight back foot disadvantage. So don't be too hard on yourself if on the first encounter you didn't quite get the vibe of the group right. But are they actually people you want to hang around with? Are these your people? Because you have friends already. And as much as you may be questioning at times, well, why do they like me or whatever, you know what the funny thing is? Two things you should never really need to find out or want to find out. Why people like you, and why, or more importantly, why people like you and why you like them, and why you love your partner. These should just be wonderful mysteries that you just do. You like people because you do. You love your partner because you do. As soon as they have a physical attribute, there may be things that you really like about them, but the actual general vibe is you're just those type of people. I had this conversation with some friends of mine. We were doing some construction work outside and building a few things, and we hadn't seen each other in ages, and we all just said, we were talking about people that we'd lost contact with, we don't talk to anymore, and people that really, really pissed us off. And funny enough, that we all agreed on the same thing. But we were having this conversation saying that we just are people. As you get older, you find your people. We all have the same thoughts, the same mindsets. We're not here for drama. We're not trying to, cause any shit. We don't, we can just come together and just be. And this is where your friends come in. You have your friends, you have your people. Now, if you meet some people that are new and you're worried about what they think of you, make sure you ask yourself what you think of them. You don't have to slate them, but you can quite openly say, you know what, I just don't think these are people I'd ever hang around with again. It turns out most of the time you won't. But you're still worried about what they thought of you because it's that whole, what are they saying about me behind my back, whatever. You know what? That's not, you're better off not knowing. It's like that golden rule is that never read the comments. Because I've had some freaking wonderful ones put up at some place on some of the things I posted. But don't read the comments. You know who you are. You know who your people are. You know who you're talking to. Yes, when you get to social media, there's obviously, you've got a much wider audience and stuff. But when it comes to your actual social circles, if these are new people, make as much, rather than worrying about what their assessment is of you, assess them as well. Are these people you want to hang around? Do you want to see these people again? Because if you don't, it doesn't really matter what they think of you. When it comes to, it's usually a partner's thing that's quite a difficult one, because if your partner has friends that you don't like or vice versa, you may feel that you need to, you dread the thought of seeing them again because you think, I just don't like you, you don't like me, whatever. If there's any couples listening, don't hang around with each other. I literally have one of my best friends, my other half can't stand. Can't stand him. He can't stand her. And it's great because they don't have to interact with one another. They really don't. I can go see him and have a great time. We don't, he doesn't mention my other half, which is great because you don't have to talk about it, so we can just escape for a bit. And he never comes over, so my other half doesn't have to deal with it. It's like you don't have to integrate these groups sometimes. If your missus doesn't get on with your mates, that's fine. There's probably some of her friends you don't get on with and vice versa. Just agree that, look, that's fine. I'm just going to go see him when I get some free time. You don't have to come around. We don't have to interact. You can have separate friendship groups. It doesn't matter because you'll build a set of friends together, which will make it easier on your social anxiety because these are people that you've created a group with together. Sometimes it is just one of those things where you're not going to integrate into the life they had. You make the new one together and you have your separate bits either side. It's probably actually quite healthy to have people that don't get no use so that you can just disappear and get some different feedback. So that's one of the big ones, just, knowing if these people are your people or not and whether you actually want to hang around with them. And the other thing with social anxiety is kind of being open about it and finding people to talk to. Anxiety is a funny one because it rattles around in your head. If you don't get it out, it builds up and builds up and builds up, kind of like a thunderstorm. It needs to dump. You need to get it out to turn it back into a nice white fluffy cloud that's in your head, if we're going to use any kind of analogy. So all the time these thoughts are rattling around in your head, they're building up, they're building up, they're building up. It gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse. The moment you release it, even a little bit, and just get some of it off your chest, out of your head, talking to somebody maybe on a neutral ground. This is what I act to be in my role as a trainer, coach, therapist, whatever, is to allow you to dump that out. Just get it out of your system for a second because then the cloud gets less heavy. You've dumped it out, it's become real. These thoughts the trouble is when a thought's rattling around in your head, it's very hard to pick it apart and rationalize it because it's not real, to use air quotes. When you say something out loud, it becomes real. It's a practice that we use from a therapeutic point of view. It's like, I've got all these thoughts rattling around in my head. Tell me them. Can't do that. Why not? Well, because then I have to deal with them. Yes, exactly, you do. But more importantly, it becomes real, which is why people don't like talking about their problems, even to themselves. You can rattle it around in your head. Writing it down works as well, but to speak it means that somebody could hear it. Even if you're not in the room with anybody, if the words leave your mouth, there's always a chance that somebody could hear it. And that's terrifying because it means it's out there and it's real. But what it also is very liberating in the sense that it gets it out of your head. It's no longer rattling around. It can be picked apart by somebody who is trained to deal with it. We can find some logic in there. We can go, okay, well, that makes sense. What about this? Is there any thoughts leading on to that? Because finally, once that first piece is done, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, right? All the time the pieces are on the box, it's almost impossible. You never start a puzzle from the middle piece because one, you have no idea what the middle piece is. Secondly, it would just take you for goddamn ever to try and piece it around from the core point. You always start with the corners. You get your frame built, and this comes from letting little bits out that we can go, right, well, that bit goes there, that bit goes there. Things are starting to link together now, and all of a sudden you get this picture building up, and then you may decide that you want to carry on with the rest of it, but you need to have those corner pieces in first, otherwise the ideas don't make any sense. There's no logic, there's no concept to it. Now, mental health, as I've said before, doesn't run on logic, which seems a bit contradictory to the term I've just said, but in your own head, there is no logic to mental health. Hold on a second. Oh. The language that you're speaking in your head isn't a universal language. Everybody interprets their own mental health, their own problems differently. The best way to deal with it is to find as many different languages, I suppose, spoken back on interpretation, find the one that makes sense the most. Now, I spent a long time learning, quote unquote, these languages. So when people say things to me, they tend to make sense because I see where the pattern's coming from. But for yourself, it's very, very difficult because, you're trying to find why you feel this way. You don't know why every time a social situation sends you spiraling out of control. You don't know why you overanalyze afterwards. You don't know why the opinion of people matters to you so much. There's probably a reason for that. Again, this isn't something a podcast can figure out. We'd have to, sit and talk together about that, because there's clearly some things down the line that need to be done. One of the other interesting things about social situations is if you're under pressure for success, this is another thing that's come out as well. Feeling like a failure can lead to social anxiety, and everyone thinks they have to rattle things off very quickly as well, just to jump straight back in as I was trying to close off. I'm coming back in, people, because this is how podcasts work. If you're worried about your social standing, i.e. your success, if you feel like you're living in the shadow of somebody else, this happens a lot as well. Your timeline's not the right word. Your running speed seems to be accelerated. And every time that you don't succeed on your first attempt, you see it as a huge failure. Okay? You go in and do a presentation, and again, because this is a social aspect, you come in and do a presentation and it's not that good. It's good enough, but it's not that good. It's not perfect, to say. You could have done more. Instant setback. Oh, I failed. You see a person of whom's, I'm going to try and put this in as politically correct way as possible, someone whose orientation you find the most attractive on a physical level, because that is how attraction works on the first point, because you don't know what the person is, you don't know what they look like. So the person that you find the most physically attractive on first encounter, rather than trying to get to know the person, you instantly feel like you should go and talk to them and try and ask them out, get their number, whatever. Now, normally, unless you're very confident, you wouldn't actually do that. Normally what you do is, especially in a social situation, you would probably just get to know that person and build a bit of a rapport up. But because you're under pressure, there's that social anxiety, there's that fear of failure in a social situation, you start feeling like you should be over there trying to get details all of a sudden, and then when it doesn't happen, you feel like you failed. But more importantly, the reason you failed probably is because you put so much pressure on yourself to get a result that you just look awkward. And this happens with guys more than it does girls. Reason being is that women are sexually selective. You are also, to put this in a psychological term that will make sense, you're also sexually secret. What I mean by that is that humans don't come into heat. There's not a specific time where all of a sudden there's a big red beacon on your head saying, yes, I'm in season. We are, as humans, females are sexually active at all times, but they're also sexually selective. So therefore they choose who they do and don't sleep with. Because, if they haven't said yes, it's a no, and no definitely means no, because we all know what the other thing is. So when you go up there and you're putting pressure on yourself and you feel that all of a sudden you need to get some sort of result, and a girl turns around and says no, that's a huge rejection. Now, men, this funny enough, if you've ever seen the show Take Me Out, the reason they do it from a female panel to male singular person looking for a date is because psychologically that's how males are genetically programmed to deal with looking for a mate. What I mean by that is that if men are designed to show off, quote unquote, to attract a female. So by standing in front of a group of 30 women saying, this is what I am, you're going to learn some things about me, this is my chance to show you what I do, keep your light on please, is basically the whole mating ritual just done for TV. Men are designed to handle rejection better than women from a psychological and mating perspective, because we have to compete with one another for the attraction of a female. Okay, and this happens across nature anyway. It's always the males that have to compete because that's what males have to do. That's why, all male birds have the best plumage. The male lion has the big mane as a sign of virility. It has to fight off for the males to show that they're the strongest. Men have physical attributes that can make them more attractive or unattractive to women, depending on what their preference is. We're not quite so... It's not like the, deers and stuff where they have to rut and stuff, which would be a terrifying prospect if males were only interested in sex for 1 month of the year. Could you imagine? And so to be rejected still hurts, and younger males tend to get a bit bristly about it, but, you should really be able to deal with it. But from a female point of view, it's very psychologically damaging to approach a male and be rejected, because it's not how it works, if that makes sense. Like, you couldn't put one female in front of 30 guys on Take Me Out and then have all the guys turn the lights out. It would just be too much. It would be too much, because that's not how it works. So again, this is why I say it happens to men more than women, but men, young boys, especially if they're goaded on by their mates, I'll go get that girl's number. She turns up and says no. If you're suffering from anxiety already, that's bad, but especially because you feel drawn to do that because of the anxiety that you've seen this person you like, normally all you do is go and say hello, and that would be it. But because you are anxious and you feel that there's a failure if you don't go and talk to them, like there has to be a result, you're going to go in there and you're going to start talking, and you're going to be really awkward and weird, and she's going to think, oh God, he doesn't even want to do this. And it's usually end up being pretty bad. And that's going to perpetuate this fear of being in social situations, because outside of the conversation point of view, it's another chance that you're going to fail. And that is something that needs to be addressed as well. If you're constantly feeling that every social situation, every girl that you like, any guy that you like, any insert preference here that you like, that you have to instantly go and try and get a win, must get a number, she has to like you, that may be a sign that you're suffering from another, that slightly third form of social anxiety where everything has to be a win. Because if you don't get a win, then it's clearly your fault. You're a bad person. You suck at everything, and you get in yourself into a bit of a tizzy. So just be aware that, it's probably not because you're a failure. It's probably because you've worked yourself into such a state about it that you look a little bit awkward, and being awkward is not a great for anybody, because it's not even like that you've done anything wrong. It just feels like, does he even want to do this? It can be a little bit off-putting. I've seen enough guys do this in my time where they've come up and they're not very confident and they're trying to act confident. Okay, this has gone on a weird tangent, by the way, and I don't even care because it's my podcast, so thanks for listening. If you're not confident, and I mean this with anxiety as well, this is another key thing which I was going to get into, so I've managed to bring it back. If you're not confident, don't be. It's not who you are. You will gain confidence the more you expose yourself to things, but trying to pretend to be confident is not going to work for you, because it will get you into sticky situations. Guys and girls, if you're slightly awkward, a little bit shy, which was me at one stage, own it. Be awkward and shy, because it's you, and you'll find somebody that can help you in a relationship status like that. If you're awkward and somebody knows that you're awkward, you'll probably be fine with them, as opposed to acting really confident and then all of a sudden it turns out you're not, because now you've got yourself into a situation that you can't really get yourself out of. And a lot of people think they're not interesting enough. Everybody has something that makes them interesting. It's usually the thing that you like, the thing that you know the most about, and this comes down to knowing your people, because the people that are your people will probably have the same interests as you. Now, you could be into comics, you could be into cars, you could be into surfing, skateboarding, planets, stars. I'm a massive nerd. Like, I just love learning about all that kind of weird stuff. So the difference is, if you find yourself feeling uninteresting, it's probably because you're not talking to the right people. Because everybody is interesting. Everybody is interesting because everybody's into something. It could be anything. PC gaming, console gaming. Yes, it's a very nerdy, geeky thing, but if that's your thing, that's your thing. And that's what you've got to start embracing. So I'm going to wrap up, because I can go on all day about this stuff, because all things start coming into my head. But we're going to conclude with, we're coming into the final stages of this lockdown. Okay, in about 14 days, so in 2 weeks, the gyms are going to open, as well as salons and pub gardens. These are big instances of big social areas, being around lots of people again when we haven't been in front of lots of people in a while. You can now hang around with up to 6 people. You don't have to, but you can. It's again, daunting prospect if you've been quite good at ducking out of social agreements because of lockdown and not feeling well and stuff. Move at your own pace. Hopefully, some of the parts in this podcast have helped you figure out why you may feel the way you are, what sort of type of socially anxious person you are. Use it to your advantage. Remember, if you like having solo conversations, stick to one-on-one things until you feel more confident. If you like being in groups, stick to groups. Try not to do one-on-one meetings. You come at this at your own pace. You move as fast as you want to move. Nobody can force you. Don't feel pressured into it. Remember, not everybody's going to be your people, so you don't have to hang around with people you don't like. And you are always interesting. Always. There isn't one person on this planet that doesn't have something interesting about them. You just have to find the people that want to talk to you about it. Got some cool things planned as well in the coming weeks. Kind of scary and cool from a business perspective, but once it's built, we'll start giving some teasers and stuff. So it's going to be good, and some cool stuff coming with the podcast. We're going to start interviewing some wonderful ladies. We're going to do a bit of a PCOS mini series because it's something that I work with quite a lot with my clients, and it's going to be interesting. So as always, if you have anything you want discussed, if you have any questions for the upcoming people we're coming in to, just make sure you keep aware on social media and stuff, and we've got options to give questions. And if social anxiety is something that's really getting to you, please let me know, because that's what I'm dealing with the most at the moment. So I'll be more than happy to help you. Take care, everybody. Peace and love. Speak to you soon.